and it's the working people that I'm here to speak for tonight. I'm not here to wave any Union Jacks. If you ever find me with that Better Together crowd holding a Union Jack, standing shoulder to shoulder with the Tories, shoot me. You'll never find me with a Tory, and you'll never find me with the Union Jack. My flag is red, always has been and always will be, even though they kicked me out of the Labour Party. I'm still a real Labour man. And it's a real Labour message that I'm going to deliver tonight. Though, of course, we welcome votes, no votes in this referendum from any and all quarters. They'll all be for different reasons, just like the yes voters will be for different reasons. So here are my reasons. First of all, I've been divorced more than once. And believe me, it's never amicable. It's never amicable, even when they pretend it is amicable. And a divorce between two parties that have been joined together for more than 300 years, have grafted together like bone, have 900,000 Scottish people living and working in England, have hundreds of thousands of English people living and working in Scotland, to propose that we put a border, and it will be a physical border. I drove through it in a second today, but in the next 2 years, if the vote goes the wrong way, it will be an actual border for reasons that I and my right-hand man on this tour will explain. Putting a border on a piece of land, a very small country of English-speaking people who have overwhelmingly the same interests in that they work for the same employers, they join the same trade unions, they read the same books and newspapers and magazines and watch the same television and go to the same pictures on the cinema and listen to the same music and above all speak the same language. That's just stupid, in my opinion. The idea that Scotland has a right to self-determination is, of course, absolute. And I've always supported that as one of the leading campaigners for a Scottish Parliament in the early days. But self-determination allows you to choose whether to be part of a state with other nations or whether every nation has to have its own state. And I've never believed in that. Contrary to some of the guff I read on Twitter, people say you support independence for every country in the world except your own. Except I don't support independence for every country in the world. The Catalans and the Basques are both specific nations within Spain. I don't support breaking up Spain. I don't support breaking up Belgium. I don't support breaking up Italy, where the northern leagues want to be shot of the poorer Italians in the south. I don't support breaking up any of these countries. I don't support breaking up India. I don't support breaking up Cyprus. I could go on, but it would bore you. Self-determination allows a nation to choose whether to coexist with other nations in a single state. And when you've done so for 300 years and there is no pressing need to separate, then I think it's foolish to do so. And breaking up countries has never actually worked out all that successfully. Just ask them in the Ukraine right now. Ask them in Yugoslavia. Ask them in Czechoslovakia, where the Czech people wanted the Slovaks to remain with them. The Slovaks insisted on independence and their own currency, a point I'll come to in a minute. It lasted 24 days. The Slovak currency was the shortest-lived currency in history, and the IMF had to move in and take over their economy. And now the Czech Republic is one of the most happening places in the world, and Slovakia is a backwater.
But funny enough, I had this subject in my mind recently. It came across my radar recently because my son was doing his modern studies higher. And one of the subjects that he was doing was, I did an essay on, was about health inequality. And essentially what it said was that people in the East End of Glasgow, and I know in parts of Ayrshire, but their life expectancy was in the early 60s. And what it said in his modern studies thing in school was that the life expectancy in Lenzie, you're just a few miles away on the other side of Glasgow, was I think 78 or 80 or something like that. Now there is the challenge of politics, not to reduce the life expectancy in Lenzie, but to raise the life expectancy and to raise the prospects and to raise the educational achievements of people in the places that have been deprived. So the same story emerges this week in the Scottish Parliament. But the comparison the Nationalists make is not between the East End of Glasgow and Lenzie. The comparison they make is between Scotland and Harrow. Now the thing about Harrow, for the avoidance of doubt, is it's in England. It's in posh England. So the conflict for nationalists is between Scotland as a whole, including the people in Lenzie, and Harrow. Now, in a nutshell, there is the argument. Now, they have all the powers that they could ever have, and a great deal of money to go with it, over the National Health Service, over education, over all the tools which are needed in order to address that inequality within Scottish society. But they have no interest in doing so, because all they want to do is to turn people in Scotland against people in England on the basis that England is Harrow. Well, Scotland isn't the East End of Glasgow or Lenzie. There's difference within Scotland, but England isn't Harrow. England is Liverpool and Manchester and Newcastle. There are more people living in poverty within 10 miles of the Palace of Westminster than there are in the whole of Scotland. And are their needs the same as the people in Lenzie, any more than the people in the East End of Glasgow, or their needs the people in Harrow? It's an nonsensical thing, but it comes, and they love to say they're not racist and they're not Anglophobic. But when they know perfectly well that exactly the same statistics exist within Scotland, why do they not use the example within Scotland and say this is a problem to be addressed? Why do they pit Scotland against England in order to make that false analogy? That is the question. The second thing I want to address is the whole thing about negative and positive. You know, this is too important to be a word game. But any clown knows that something that is positive to one person is negative to the other. I mean, that's just a simple matter of language, of semantics. So, the fact you're arguing for a no, there's an element of negativity, because the word no is negative. But if you look at the things that I'm arguing for and George is arguing for, I'm incredibly positive about them. I'm incredibly positive about every force within society that has given me my life opportunities. I'm incredibly positive about the National Health Service, about comprehensive education, about slum clearance, about a welfare state, every one of which has been built through struggle and has had the advantage of not only benefiting people in Scotland, but in every part of the United Kingdom. And in contrast to my positivity about all of these things, I can think of nothing more negative than to divide a small island into separate states in the second decade of the 21st century. That is what is negative. So forget the positives and negatives. This is a positive campaign in favour of values, in favour of unity, in favour of the things we've done together over the years. And the negativity is to divide us by a border. And there would be a border. There would be a border. To divide us by a border on the basis of identity. And George used the example of Liverpool. Let me tell you, nobody will ever persuade me that Liverpudlians are foreigners. Nobody will ever persuade me of that. And if he had tried to argue that case in any part of the west of Scotland just 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think they'd have got a very, very dusty reply.
I'm guessing that there's not many Tories in this audience. I might be wrong, but that's my guess. And I sometimes think that Alex Salmond is a stuck record talking about the Tories. So I want you to remember something. I want you to remember the dark decades of the Thatcher idea. And I want you to remember how Thatcher came in. 1979, 35 years ago, a cold winter night, when James Callaghan's government was getting stronger, the economy was getting stronger, the currency was getting stronger, the balance of payments was getting stronger, and Labour had a plan. I was a Labour organiser at the very time, that if that government could only have survived until later that year or early the next year, a Labour government could have been re-elected under James Callaghan, who was one of the more popular prime ministers we ever had. I happen to think he was a fine man. I knew him well. What happened? The SNP tabled a vote of no confidence in the Labour government in 1979. The Tories, seeing it as a canary in the mine, realised that with the SNP's support, they could actually get Callaghan out in the winter of 1979. And so they tabled a motion of no confidence. And at 10 o'clock, staggering out of the House of Commons bars, because for the 11 SNP MPs, every night was Burns night, believe me. Every night was Burns night. Staggering out of the House of Commons bars, swaying in the non-existent breeze, they followed Margaret Thatcher into the division lobby to defeat the Labour government, provoke a general election which Thatcher won, and then destroyed Scotland, destroyed industrial England, laid waste to the country, millions unemployed, from which we've never recovered. So the next time you hear Alex Salmond and the SNP talking about the Tories, remember who brought Margaret Thatcher to power here.
I just had one wee footnote to that, because they like to talk about oil, and reports and things like that from the 70s. But, when they did that in 1979, they did so in the full knowledge that the Tory manifesto, which was obviously going to be introduced as a result of our actions, included the abolition of the British National Oil Corporation. The state, so now, when they talk about Norway, the Norwegian oil model is based on Statoil, a state oil company. The British oil model under Labour was based on the British National Oil Corporation. In 1979, the SNP voted with the Tories to bring down the Labour government in the certain knowledge that the British National Oil Corporation would be privatised, and at that point the whole structure of the North Sea industry changed. So beware the crocodile tears. They share the responsibility for ensuring that Britain went on a totally different path in the North Sea from Norway.
Brilliant. And one last point then, before we break. And Willie McKelvey can bear me out on this more than, other than my mother, anyone alive today. And I'm saying this as somebody that was kicked out the Labour Party. Yeah? They kicked me out the Labour Party and abolished my constituency just in case. Everything that's good that we've ever had, we got through Labour. Everything. Everything. Not everything that Labour did was good. Some of the things Labour did was bad. But everything that was good, we got through Labour. Labour in the workplace, through the trade unions, Labour in the town hall, or Labour in government. I was born in a slum, 12A, Athol Street, in an attic, the roof sloping so sharply that they couldn't fit a cot in the attic. I slept as a baby in a drawer, in one room, an outside toilet, shared, I know you think it's funny, but it's true. An outside toilet shared with 5 other families. The seat was always warm. That slum was cleared by Labour. We moved into a brand new council house given to us by Labour. I had a school at the bottom of the road, built by Labour. A park at the top of the road, built by Labour. My father and Willie McKelvey worked in a factory, NCR, from Dayton, Ohio, sent to Dundee, ordered to Dundee by Labour. I had a health centre at the end of the road, created by the Labour invention, unique in the world at that time, of a national health service. I got free school milk. I got free orange juice, free cod liver oil, free malt to build me up. I'm going to need to stop taking that. All of it from Labour. If I'd been as clever as Brian, I would have gone to a free university and been given a grant to enjoy it with from Labour. So, did any of that come from the SNP? The SNP opposed all of these things. In fact, long before there ever was oil, they wanted us to be independent. When Hitler, well, it's a fact, when Hitler was at the Channel ports, the leaders of the SNP were interned because they said it was England's war. They didn't give a damn about the unity of the working people. Now, the point I'm making is this. All these good things we got through Labour, but they were only possible because we were a big nation of tens of millions. They wouldn't have been possible as a small country of 5 million. You need a critical mass of people in order to confront capital, in order to order companies where they must locate, in order to build a national health service and all the other good things that we've got. Don't throw it all away in September. That's what I'm here to say to you. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thanks very much.